Oh hey, hey, what's up everybody, this is the Gamer Christian, and yeah, welcome to my house. What brings you here? You want some coffee? I can make you coffee. Yeah? No? Why are you guys here then? Oh, you're here for a review of the Bouncer for the PlayStation 2. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it so happens that I'm holding the game in my hands. I checked that in it. So yeah, yeah, you really want to see a review. Yeah, okay. I guess I have no choice but to do this review then. I know it's been quite some time since I did my last review. It's been like months now. I had my reasons for it. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but yes, I am finally doing a review of the Bouncer like you guys wanted. That's why you clicked on the video. So yeah. And about the storyline that I've done in my last 3 reviews, not going to happen anymore because A, they're not funny, B, they're not funny, C, they're not funny, and D, they're awful in any sort of way. I'm just going to focus just on reviews. So yeah, please you guys, please, yeah, that is truly everything I have to say right now. So let's get it started with the review. Okay, the Bouncer.
The Bouncer.
Thank you. The Bouncer.
The Bouncer.
Where the heck does it come from? Okay. The Bouncer. Good. It's a game from 2000 and it's a beat 'em up made by Squaresoft. This is one of the earliest PlayStation 2 games, you see? It's a black case. Yeah. Squaresoft claimed that this game gave a longer playtime than the standard beat 'em up we all know and love. So games like Double Dragon, Streets of Rage and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time were way too short, I guess. Square added a storyline and experience points, or how this game likes to call it, battle points. I'm not sure if the whole adding a storyline or adding battle points will fit with beat 'em up. But still, if the developers know what they are doing, it's not going to be a big problem. Well, it's made by Square, you know, developers of such classics such as Final Fantasy VII, Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana, which are not beat 'em ups, they're RPGs. Well, they made pretty good games besides RPGs such as... what did they make? Red Racer, which is not a beat 'em up, you know, for the NES. Bushido Blade, which is more like a fighting game and yet again not a beat 'em up. You know, Bushido Blade, which was also pretty good, which was not an RPG. I mean, and besides that, I can't really remember if there's any more beat 'em ups made by Square. Well, you know, I'm not so sure if they made more beat 'em ups, but before the Bouncer, but I would say this is the first time they actually made a 3D beat 'em up. So I don't know, maybe it's actually pretty cool. Maybe for every developer there has to be a first time. And maybe it's one of those hidden genres developers didn't know that they could do. So yeah, let's go check the game out. Yes, okay. I know my PlayStation 2 is standing right there. Yeah, on the other side of the room. But by the power of editing, I'm going to play the game right here. Yes, so I don't have to move from my place. Since I'm not having an elaborate story time, I don't need to do so much editing. So I'm just gonna put this game into the system from here. See? Look at the wonderful power of editing. Yeah, let's just put it in. Yeah, okay. No, it's not gonna work like this. Okay, let me just open up the tray then. There you go. Let's just put it in and we are in business, my friends. Yeah. Okay, there, yeah. Good. Let's get it started. Oh yeah, I need a controller. Let me just grab the controller. Yeah, there you go. It's not easy, you know, getting the controller from this far. Yeah. So, yeah, here it is. A controller. Let's get it started. Let's play some The Bouncer.
Ah, yeah, a game from my childhood. It was the very first game I bought for my new PlayStation 2 back in the day. Even though the game magazine I was subscribed to said that I shouldn't buy the game because it wasn't that good, I bought the game anyway. I was a strange kid back then and not that smart. But is it really bad? Well, that's what I'm going to find out. First the story, and don't worry, I will not spoil anything. The story is about three bouncers named Sion Bossard, a 19-year-old man who is standard, Walt Kruger, a big man with a German name, yeah, and Ko Lifo. Lifo. A man who doesn't seem to take anything serious. Except in this scene. And this one. In their quest to save the girlfriend...
No. No. You know what? I have no idea what she is to them. No idea. Girlfriend? Family? Just a friend? What is she?
Okay. Let's start over. The story is about three bouncers in a quest to save their... friends. Yeah, friends. I have no idea what she is. Yeah. And to stop an evil man and his company from taking over the world. That's kind of the story in a nutshell. But knowing Squaresoft, they will add backstories and a bigger plot than the beginning shows. What's cool about the storyline is that you can choose 3 characters before every segment or fight. Every character has a different backstory, so it's cool that you will learn more about the leading and side characters that this game has. What's not so cool is that the characters are somewhat generic. Not the way they look, I will get to that, but their personalities. There is barely any character development, which is disappointing. I know that this is a beat 'em up, but Square added a big story to this game, so why not add a better development to these characters? The personalities of these characters are a bit standard and unoriginal, and most of these characters are virtually one note. Not all of them, but most of them. These personalities are poorly written and they should have done a much better job. What I also didn't like about these characters is some of the voice acting. It's technically not the worst voice acting in the world, but that really doesn't say much. Even though the casting of the voice actors were fine, I mean the voices fit with the characters they do, the voice acting was kind of weak. At least with some of the characters. Some of the characters are doing an okay job, but some of them aren't doing an okay job. For the most part, the voice acting is mediocre.
You will never get the girl back!
Oh well, there is a lot of story development in this game, especially for a beat 'em up, so I guess it's okay if you want a story for your beat 'em up. I don't know, the storyline felt a bit unnecessary. It's not the worst storyline and there are some plot twists here and there, so it's okay. What I did like though about the story and his characters are the huge backstories of the characters. Well, huge. It's big enough to make the backstories of these characters interesting, that you want to keep playing. Through the game you will see loading screens with text on them that will explain the backstory of the 3 heroes. In these texts you will see a lot of backstory of the character you have chosen, and they're quite interesting to say the least. You will find out their history on how they met or their involvement with the evil company they fight against in this game. You will also read about some of the side characters that you will stumble across in this game or their involvement with the 3 leading characters. It is advised to play with one character through each playthrough, so you won't get confused about the story and the backstory that this game has to offer. You will also focus on that one character's backstory, the character's own path through some of the segments, the side characters that are linked to the character you play with, and you will even get some new or different cutscenes.
Man!
I'm sending this dispatch because I know you guys are alive. The Gallios is programmed to
this big
separate
ship.
once it gets near the satellite.
Back of it will return to
The
Earth.
front section will separate from the aft portion
talking
and dock
about,
with the
Dominique?
satellite. The aft portion is designed
I
to
saw it in
return
that
to Earth.
horrible dream.
If you can hear me, get
This
your
big
butts to the
ship
rear of the
splits into
shuttle.
two.
I repeat,
In your dream?
It's
I'm
true.
sending this
taking control of the
dispatch because I
Mikado
know
building.
you guys
Hide the
are-
information from the
The
scientists.
Gallios is programmed to separate
Sion.
once it gets near the
Who is
satellite.
that?
Now's not the time for 20 questions. We gotta get to the rear of the
Front
shuttle.
section will separate from the
All right,
aft
then.
portion and dock with the satellite. The aft portion is designed to return to Earth. If you can hear me, get your butts to the rear of the shuttle.
It might even feel as a whole new experience. A little bit. But like I said, it's well done how they all have different backstories and some different segments. But another reason that you can play the game more times is that the story mode is way too short. I finished the game in more than 2 hours. That's kind of ridiculous. Of course you can play the game more times with a different character, but still 2 hours is way too short. And yes, I know this is a beat 'em up, and I know that this game has to feel like an action movie. I have read that somewhere, so maybe it's excused, but maybe you can add like an extra hour and maybe a bit more interesting content.
Well, maybe they could have done more with the world you walk through. It is an interesting world. Even though you spend most of the time in the evil company you fight against, this world kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy VII! Yeah, kind of. A little bit.
I have no idea how this world works. What kind of economy does it have? What kind of cars do they use? In what year is this world?
I don't know. Makes you think about those sort of things. Yeah, makes you think. Yeah.
Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, review and stuff. Now let's talk about the graphics and presentation. The graphics are pretty good and the presentation is okay. There is not much to say about the presentation. The menus are just like old Japanese PlayStation 2 menus. The intro of the game itself is also very Japanese. The editing and music of the intro. I talked about the characters before, about their personalities and how weak they are, but let's talk about the presentation of these characters. It's very Japanese. Now that I think about it, the overall presentation is just very, very Japanese.
Now that could only mean one thing. That's made by a Japanese company. Japanese.
Even though the whole presentation is Japanese, it's not really a bad thing. The presentation overall is pretty okay. It doesn't do anything wrong and it gets the job done. What I do want to point out though about the presentation is the character design. Like I said earlier, it's very Japanese. It's extremely over the top. I know that this game isn't very realistic and it doesn't need to be. The over the top character design fits nice with the game and the gameplay it has. I mean, the developers went pretty nuts and they had fun creating these characters. Those characters could have been in RPGs. Well, not the fantasy RPGs, but more like urban RPGs, such as Final Fantasy VII and the Persona series. It's not bad character design, especially for an early PlayStation 2 game. For the most part, they look good, with nice detail, maybe a bit too much detail. I mean, those are horns coming out of Volt's head, right?
Huh. I don't know. Let's go try it out if it actually works. Doesn't seem to work.
Every character has his own style of clothing and merchandise, and it makes the characters so...
Japanese, of course.
Now the graphics look very nice. Like I said earlier, the character design is pretty cool. But what about the rest of the graphics? The cutscenes look amazing for its time, with nice special effects, pretty good animation and nice color. Still, I have one nitpick concerning one cutscene. This cutscene makes no sense. Here, I will show you the cutscene. Super fast! Why is it necessary to show the whole time the ship is lifting off? To fill the whole disc? Alright, another complaint I have is that the lip syncing of the in-game cutscenes are terrible. Sometimes they are correct, and most of the time not. I know that this is a Japanese game, so it's made for Japan first, but still, sometimes it's really awful.
There's a special train at the central station that's headed for Mikado.
When?
In half an hour.
How does it feel to have your woman taken away from you?
Mr. Wong was the one who helped me escape.
Is that you, Volt?
They just voice over the whole game, and yes, I know that it's way too expensive to make the cutscenes again to make the English voice over sync with the character's lip movement, but still, they should have done a much better job.
Yeah?
Now back to the graphics. For an early PlayStation 2 game, the graphics look very good. I've already mentioned the character design and cutscenes, but what about the rest? Well, they do not look bad. Sure, most of the level design can easily be described as forgettable, but some areas are pretty spectacular. Just look at this! But besides that, most of the level design is good looking, but boring. You will walk through streets levels, office buildings levels and factory levels. Nothing too special, but it gets the job done. Now, let's talk about the gameplay, the meat of the game, the reason to play this game.
It's not the best gameplay.
No, the gameplay isn't very good. But is it truly awful? I am not a reviewer that wants to be black and white about the games I judge, so let's see if there are bad, but also good points in this game. First, the controls. They are somewhat slow. I have complained about slow controls in my former reviews, and this game is no exception. Still, it's not so slow that the game is unplayable, it's just something you have to get used to. The issue, however, is that there is a small delay in your attacks. Sure, when you press a button the character will attack, I mean duh, but he needs to do a kind of slow animation first before inflicting damage on the enemy. A pretty good animation, mind you, but a slow animation. Like I already said, it's something you have to get used to, and not all the attacks are slow. But it's not like a fast-paced beat 'em up, which might turn off a couple of people who likes beat 'em ups. In this game you need to time your attacks or else you will get hit, because some enemies are faster than you. Still, the hit detection is fantastic and the AI is not too bad. What does work nice and fast though is the block button. Just push the button and he blocks. What I also like is when you block, but the enemies attack you in the back, you will get hit. Squaresoft made a good decision to make the enemies hit you in the back while you block. It makes it more realistic and it adds a bit more challenge to the game.
But now, the biggest enemy in the whole game is...
this guy! No. This guy! No. Or maybe even this guy! No! It's the camera! Yes, the biggest enemy is the camera. Not only is it sometimes way too close to the character you are playing, in some of the sections you can't control it. Why can't I control the camera? It makes no sense. The camera just does what it wants and it just moves randomly. I mean, take a look in this part. In this section you are walking through a boring hallway. All I need to do is to go forward, but because of the camera, walking here feels disorienting. Sometimes the camera is right next to you, sometimes it chooses to go right behind you, and sometimes it just do. Like I already said, camera control would have been nice, right? Also, the camera in the beat 'em up sections is also not that great. Not as bad as the camera in the non-beat 'em up sections, but still not very good. The problem is yet again camera control. Still, in the beat 'em up sections it's not as needed as in the non-beat 'em up sections, and in some beat 'em up levels the whole area fits the whole screen, so it's not as bad, but camera control would be nice. I know that I am repeating myself, but it's really a big problem. Now that I've bashed the camera of this game, let's go to another problem that this game possesses. I said that the camera was the biggest enemy.
I was wrong. So very wrong.
No. The biggest enemy that this game has is the non-beat 'em up sections. goodness, these non-beat-em-up sections are maybe one of the worst things in gaming history. Okay, maybe that's a bit overreacting, but it's still very, very awful. It is not just a few non-beat-em-up sections, no, it's every non-beat-em-up sections in the game. The problem with the camera I just talked about are more a problem in the non-beat-em-up sections.
Let me explain why.
Where do I begin? First of all, the one thing I've talked about is the camera. The camera is really a big problem. Not just that one part I've already talked about, but there are more parts where the camera is a huge issue. I don't need to go in huge detail, but let me say again that camera control would have been nice. Am I repeating myself again? Yeah, okay, sorry. But the camera isn't the big problem in these segments. No, the big problem is the task you need to do in these segments. Take this segment for example. In this segment you need to find a card key to disengage the other box with rocket fuel. So there will be no explosion, obviously. Now listen carefully. All you need to do is go to a box and press X to open it. But you have a small amount of time and pressing X doesn't always work. I don't get it. Why doesn't he open the box? And you know what? With every time you play the segment, it's always in the last box. It just doesn't matter in what order you open the boxes, and don't forget that you have a little bit of time. So all you do in this segment is go to a box and ram that X button. It's not challenging to open boxes and just add a small amount of time. It's just...
I don't have a word for this. This.
It's just poralicious. Anyway, this segment is bad. It's brainless and it's unnecessary to the whole game. Adding time to something that's way too simple and poorly designed doesn't make the challenge good or, heck, existing. This segment is just there. Okay, I'm sorry that I keep going on and on about that one segment that doesn't even take long to complete. There's another segment that is very, very bad. It's not just very, very bad, no, it's the worst segment in the whole game. I talked about the guard segment like it's the worst, but at least that segment is over before you know it. No, the segment I'm going to talk about is almost unbearable. Let me explain. It's a segment that happens with Ko's storyline. Every character is captured and every character has his own segment. The other two characters, Volt and Leon, just have a beat 'em up and just walking around segments. But not Ko. Oh no, what does he have? Remembering what button you have to push at certain moments. Oh my goodness. The thing is, in order to avoid guards and stuff, Ko puts on a Mikado Special Forces uniform. Yeah, those guys. In order to avoid fights with guards and... you know, stuff. Robots. You need to push a certain button to do the same move as the Special Forces are doing. A screen with info on what button is doing what move is in the beginning of this segment, or when you push start at times when you don't need to do a move to a guard. Like I already said, you need to push a button when the guard is doing a certain move. There is a total of 4 moves. You need to learn and remember a button is what move, or else you will get into a fight. I'd rather be in a fight than constantly guessing what button I have to push. I mean, a fight at least gives you BP/experience points. It's so... stupid. I mean, really? In a game that has a bunch of beat 'em ups in them, somebody thought of this? What, to alternate the gameplay a little? And you know what, I understand that you want to alternate from time to time, you know, to keep it at least a bit fresh. And sure, it might feel kind of challenging to guess or know fast what button you have to push. And one move looks a lot like another move, so that could make you confused, so you might accidentally push the wrong button. That was an okay idea in here. But still, you are alternating, is that even a word, with something that's actually so stupid.
What? Again? Okay.
mean, first you need to learn what buttons do what, and secondly, if you have learned the buttons, it's just 5 to 6 times you need to know these buttons. All you do is guess or know what button you have to push. Oh, but let's spice it up. Later you will have 2 guards where you have to push 2 buttons to do 2 moves, or a guard will do all moves at once, so that you must guess what move you have to move with the guard's last move. Oh my goodness. It might make it a tiny bit more challenging, but somehow this segment isn't feeling all that hard, and failing would bring you into a fight anyway. So what is the use of this segment? It's not gameplay in a good sense, it's just annoying. It's like DDR, except you need to push one button from time to time, but instead seeing what you need to push, you just guess or know what you have to push. And you know what? This segment could have been alright. Well, more like able. But instead, it doesn't really fit with a beat 'em up, and it's just pointless.
My goodness, did I had a lot to say about that segment. Whew. Whew. It's just...
Oh wait, there's another guard there. Okay, what move will he do? Okay, that move. Forget it. Let's just beat him up our way through this segment. Whoa, that was a lot of info for one segment. Oh my goodness. There are a few more non-beat 'em up sections that aren't that great, but these were the worst. I really want to talk about these non-beat 'em up segments because they were terrible. Now, let's talk about this one segment that has beat 'em up this time. That might be even worse than the segment I've talked about.
Well, just as worse. It depends on how you look at it.
In this segment you need to escort the girl friend of Leon or something, Dominique, through a couple of areas with a bunch of robots. Before this segment you need to choose what character will escort Dominique. It doesn't matter that much which one you choose, except getting a kind of different cutscenes, and the PP you collect are purely for that character you've chosen. In the cutscenes the same thing will happen, but then with the character you have chosen, obviously.
I'll go with her.
I'll go with her.
I know I can depend on you, Bolt. But I would have preferred
So
Sion.
we're the decoys then?
Come on, Cole.
Yeah.
Be careful, Sion. Be careful, you two.
I'll see you back home, Dominique. I promise.
You too, Ko. Sion, hey, Bolt.
Huh?
What is it?
Can I stay with you always? You think it's okay for me to stay with
What's this all of a
Sion?
sudden?
I don't like this place. I ran away from here, and Mr. Wong was the one who helped. That's how I was able to.
The PP, however, is for the character if you choose to fight anyone in the segment. Now, here is one of the problems with this segment. When I play this segment, I always want to collect as much PP as possible. Now, that is of course my own choice. I don't have to fight them to continue. Maybe 1 or 2 because they block my path, but overall it's still optional. Now, I personally choose to fight them because of the many BP you can collect fighting these robots. There is a risk though. You will fight them yourself. No fellow characters to help you fighting these guys. So you will need to do your best to get through this segment. Sometimes there are more robots in one spot and they will gang up on you, so much though that some attacks are too hard to block and avoid. So you have to be really careful not to lose too much health with these fights, especially in the beginning of the segment. Heck, it might even feel a bit unfair at times. And yes, I know that I don't have to fight them, but seriously, would you pass up an opportunity to get lots of BP, even if it would mean to start this segment over and over again? So yeah, they could have made this segment a bit more doable, even if it is my own choice to fight all of these robots. And of course you don't have to fight all of them, you can just try to get as much PP as possible. But still, it can be pretty frustrating to start over and over again. But I haven't told you guys what the biggest problem with this segment is. It's not the unfair difficulty. Like I already said a couple of times, fighting most of the enemies is optional. No, the biggest problem with this segment is the absolute breaker for this part.
Bum bum bum, it's the escorting. Bum bum bum. It's too much over the top. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I apologize.
Oh my goodness, this has got to be one of the worst escort missions in gaming history. I have never ever seen or played a worse escort mission than this one. Okay, let me explain why. It's her terrible, non-existing AI. It's so bad. She will get in the way, her health bar isn't great, and she just stands there. When I'm fighting a couple of enemies, she will sometimes get between me and the bad guys I am fighting. And it doesn't help that her health bar isn't the greatest. I mean, seriously, why would she stand right in front of me when I'm fighting these dangerous robots? Does she want to get hit? It's like she doesn't see them or something. Even when she gets hit, she just keeps on standing in your way sometimes. She just stands by you on any random spot when you are not walking. It makes no sense. You see, not only is the difficulty unfair, the AI of Dominique is horrendous. And yes, I know that I don't have to fight the bad guys and I can just ignore them for the most part, like I already explained. You know what? Okay, let's just ignore the bad guys and play this segment like you should. Just go from point A to point B and just try to keep her safe from as many enemies as possible. Now, there will be barely any fighting. All you do now is walking. With 1 or 2 fights. Heck, you can just go past most of the enemies. They are just way too slow to catch up on you. Just keep walking and you will be safe for 90 to 95% of this segment. Whoa, is this segment pointless and brainless now? Now all you do is walk. And a fight here and there. But for the most part you just walk. Sure, now Dominique's AI isn't that bad anymore, thank goodness. But that's because she just walks behind you.
I can't believe this. It's now the opposite from how I played it before. It's wow.
Instead of unfair difficulty and bad Dominique AI, it's now way too simple and boring. I mean, this segment is just so poorly made. Not only is it poorly made, it feels like the creators didn't feel like making this segment. This segment is just, it's just non-existing. If this segment was the whole game, oh, I don't even want to think about that. Whew. But still, this segment is horrible and it almost feels like a game breaker. Okay, maybe that's a bit overreacting. I mean, this segment isn't all that long, thank goodness. But still, the only good side about this segment is the many BP you can collect. Now you understand why I collect as much points as possible. It's the only redeeming thing you can get from this segment.
You know, I'm so done with this segment. I mean, I have said enough about it, right? More than enough. I mean, I have more to say, but then I will sit here until next year. You know, when my next review is done. Yeah, hilarious. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about something positive this time. No more about segments that are poorly made. No more.
You think I would have talked about it enough, right? It may sound like there is nothing good about the gameplay, and in fact there is a lot wrong with the gameplay, but there's also something well done about the gameplay. Maybe it's also one of the best things about this game. It's the character's different fighting styles and moves that you have and can unlock. Each character has a different and unique fighting style and play different from one another. Sion has a mix between Kempo and street fighting, Volt does wrestling, and Ko has Taekwondo. Because of the different fighting styles and moves that each character has, it feels fresh every time you play with one of the characters. I mean, it's so cool that you can choose a character to your liking and strategy. And you can experiment with each character and the many moves they offer. It might even feel like a whole new experience. Okay, that's a bit overreacting, a whole lot of overreacting, but the difference between fighting styles are big enough that you have to use a new strategy and moves with each character. I mean, Sion is the all-round character, he has normal speed, normal strength, he is a character that is most suited for beginners. His moves evolves around punches and kicks. Volt is big and strong and has a big health bar, but is really slow. His moves evolves around throwing enemies and using his big body. Ko is of course the fast character and has nice combos, but his health bar and strength isn't the greatest. His moves involves using mostly kicks. Not only does these moves look cool, but some are extremely useful. Not all of them, but some moves really does great damage and has a good strategy with each character, and trust me, there are a lot of moves you can use, and the number of moves with each character, especially after you have unlocked all the moves, is very extensive. With so many moves, this game feels almost like a fighting game. And with the awesome looking fights you have, this game also looks like an action movie.
You see, it's not all bad with the gameplay. There is something else I really want to address. It's something negative about the game. Sorry.
Okay, this will be the last negative thing I want to address about the gameplay in detail. If I want to address every issue about the gameplay in detail, we will be sitting here until next year.
You know, when my next review is coming out. Let me just, yeah.
Okay, it's about the strategy. I know I've talked about the strategy in this game and that you can use a strategy with the many moves you have, but you don't have to. Me personally, I've used one strategy throughout the whole game with all 3 characters. I just kept on using the punch button. That's all I did throughout the whole game, even on the bosses. All I did was punching the bad guys over and over again, and that was all I need to beat the game. Sure, it might suck out all of the fun, and not every character has the best punch button, but I used it nonetheless. Just take a look at the very last boss, and oh yeah, spoiler alert! Kinda.
There's no turning back now. It's time to go all out.
You see, even the very last boss was beaten with just the punch button. The enemies and bosses just can't keep up if you just keep using the punch button, which is the fastest attack in the game. They will barely get a chance of striking you. Unbelievable! It's kind of a big issue, and since using the punch button is all you need, I mean one hit with the punch button is enough to make an enemy stop attacking for a short moment, or to make them fall to the ground, the beat 'em up mechanics kind of fails. There are so many good beat 'em ups that just using the punch button isn't enough, and it's because of good AI. The AI in this game is not the worst, but when you are in a fight, sometimes enemies just stand by and they are waiting for their turn. Now all I do is just punching the enemies, since the enemies can't keep up, like I said, until I go to the next, so I can repeat the process of punching. The AI isn't always standing by, and you do need to block sometimes from enemy attacks. Like I said, the AI isn't the worst, but still, it's not well made when just using the punch button is enough to finish all of the fights. And yes, I know that just using the punch button goes against the game and what it represents, a cool action movie with lots of moves, but because of the slow controls that I've complained about earlier, and the fact that I suck at this game, I had no choice most of the time. But even when I didn't need the punch button, I just kept using it. It just made the game easier, because constantly using cool moves that are a bit too slow might get a bit annoying after some time. It's not that great that most of the challenge comes from timing your hits well, especially in a beat 'em up. And okay, they are not the slowest moves you will find in a beat 'em up, but there are lots of moments in this game that it really needs fast action. So you might want to go to the just hitting that punch button strategy. But if you don't mind slow but cool moves that require you to be well timed, then go nuts, I guess.
Okay, that was the last negative thing I wanted to discuss in detail. Okay, now let's go to something very positive this time, the second best thing about this game.
Besides the storyline, there are some other modes you can play as well. You have versus mode, where you can choose two options: battle mode, where 4 opponents battle it out, and team mode, where you can fight 3 versus 3. You also have a survival mode, where you need to survive for as long as possible with standard beat 'em up levels. First I will talk about battle mode and team mode. In battle mode, like I already said, you fight with up to 4 characters against each other. You can do this alone against 3 AI controlled characters, or you can battle it out with 2, 3 or even 4 people with the multi-tap. The other mode, team mode, is, like I already said, 3 versus 3 opponent, and you can also play with up to 4 players. There isn't too much between the modes and they play almost the same, except one is in teams and the other has you fighting alone. In the arenas you fight in both modes are mostly taken from the storyline, varying from a forest to the flying platform ship. To win in these modes you need to beat your opponent before the time runs out, if you have chosen to keep the timer, of course. There are some standard options before you have a battle, like how many rounds or how many players, nothing too special. To unlock more characters for these modes you need to finish the story mode with all 3 characters. You can unlock characters such as Mugetsu, Durgan, Dominique and many more. What's really fun and good about these 2 modes is that it's a real fun multiplayer game. You can battle it out against or with friends. It feels like a good party fighter, and it even feels like it's better than the story mode. Well, if you do this with friends, of course. Fighting by just yourself in these modes might feel too much like a story mode battle. So it's recommended to play these modes with friends. What's also very well made is that each character has a different fighting style. Sure, you can play as the 3 heroes of the story mode, but like I already said, you can play as the other characters from the story mode. These unlocked characters has also their own fighting style, which means there is so much to play and experiment with. Because of how diverse in fighting styles these characters are, these 2 extra modes feel like an extra game that comes with the bouncer. Not only is this game a beat 'em up, it's also a fighting game. The many moves, the many different characters with their own looks and personalities, it's so very cool and extensive. Yet again, these modes feels like they are somewhat better than the story mode. Even if you are playing these modes by yourself against the AI, you can at least try the extra characters that you have unlocked. I would have liked to see a story mode with every character you unlock, but nope, you have to do it with Sion, Volt and Co. Wouldn't it be cool to play the story mode with Mugetsu? Oh well, you can't have everything, right?
See? You see? I told you it would be something very positive. Now, there are some nitpicks here and there about these 2 modes.
Okay, when you lose a battle in either of these modes, but the other AI haven't lost yet, the battle continues and you can skip it. I have a simple question. Why? Why does this battle has to go on and why can't I skip it? I have lost. Is there a reason to show the entire battle after that? Why not have an option to skip the battle and see who has won? It's not a problem when you are fighting against friends, I mean they still have to fight, but why does it still go on after my chosen character have lost the battle against the AI? Sometimes it takes 10 minutes to finish a battle. It might be a good motivation to win each battle, but why not automatically regenerate the results after you lost a battle and others are still fighting? They should have made the option to skip the rest of the battle after you have lost. Another nitpick about these modes are that some characters you unlock look too much alike. It's not really a big issue, but it feels lazy on the developer side. I mean, you get Durgan 4 times. In the story mode you fight him a couple of times, and every time you fight him he has different clothes or a different stance. So is that a good enough reason to make him an optional character every time you fight him in the story mode? It might not be so bad if you could choose him 2 times, since he play a big part in the story, but 4 times? It's really ridiculous and, like I already said, lazy.
Okay, let's talk about the last mode, survival mode. It's what you expect.
There is not much to say about the survival mode. Like I already said, you just need to survive as much rounds as possible with standard beat 'em up levels, with only 1 health bar. All you do is just beat enemies. Until you have beaten them all, then you can go to the next round with another group of enemies, with the same health bar. It's just a simple setup, some strategies being used, and there might be some fun you can have. It feels much like the story mode battles, but instead of leveling up and the story, you can go from battle to battle. You, like I already said, need to do it on 1 health bar, and what I personally like, you can choose the character you have unlocked. Instead of playing with the 3 heroes of the story mode, you can now do the beat 'em up gameplay with characters such as Mugetsu, Duragan and even Dominique. Not only does this mode offer some challenge, you can also choose to play as the other characters, which makes this mode really worth it. It might have a simple setup, and some of the problems I've already discussed will return in this mode, such as the camera and slow controls, but overall it's an okay mode with some strategy and challenge.
Okay, that was everything I wanted to tell in big detail. Whew, that was a mouthful. There are some nitpicks I want to mention before going to the verdict.
Okay, I'm sorry if I repeat myself and that I am rambling on about this game. There's just too much to say. So to make this review as short as possible, with the big possible, I will try to be brief about these complaints. First, I want to talk about the fact that there is no continue option after you die. That's really annoying. I mean, when you die, you go to the menu screen, which means you have to select the load in story mode every time. It's annoying, because when it happens, it just takes me out of the game. And it's really annoying, especially when you have an annoying escort mission, where you die so many times that it's just getting ridiculous. I shut up now about that mission. You know what, it might not be so bad for the most part, since the game is not that hard, so dying doesn't happen that much, but a continue option would have been nice. It's a simple thing, and giving us an option to continue after you die is not much trouble for the developers to add in this game, right? Another complaint I have is that the lock-on system is not that great. When you are fighting an enemy, you lock on automatically on your opponent. The issue, however, is that there is no button to release your lock from the enemy or to switch between enemies. To go to another enemy, you need to walk to him. The problem, however, is that your lock-on needs to get loose from the enemy it is focused on. So while your character is still locked on the enemy, you slowly walk away from him until the lock-on is loose and you can walk faster. Another problem, however, is that when you stumble across another enemy and you get too close, the lock-on system just locks on that enemy, even if you don't want to fight him. The developer should have made a button to release or to switch the lock-on. It can be really annoying, especially if you want to fight a different enemy. It is even more annoying when 2 or 3 enemies fight you at the same time and you want to fight a different enemy in the group you are fighting. Since the enemies are close from one another, the lock-on barely gets loose until you have defeated the enemy you are locked on. Yet again, a button for the lock-on would have been nice and practical. The lock-on system is really flawed and not well thought out.
I know I said I wouldn't talk about these complaints in detail, but there's just so much to say. Sorry, I will try to get through these complaints as possible. You know, try.
Okay, I will try to be brief this time. The next small complaint I have is that when your AI partners defeats an enemy before you do, you won't get BP. On one hand, it's understandable. You are just getting no points for something you didn't earn. On the other hand, however, it's when you struggle to beat one enemy because of how strong or annoying he is, but your partners are having no such trouble, it could happen that you only get points for one enemy. Simply put, you just won't get points for enemies you didn't beat. Which, like I already said, means that if you struggle too long, you will get barely any points. They created another issue. When you are playing through your third playthrough, the characters you haven't played with, that character has the lowest level. Because when you finish the story mode with the character you have chosen, you can take your progress you have made with that character to the next of your playthroughs, such as the skills and moves you have unlocked, which means, obviously, the characters you have not played the story mode with starts from the beginning, which means he has the lowest level. The issue I wanted to address is that when your fellow AI partners are just too strong, which means they defeat the enemies quicker than in the other 2 playthroughs, which means that you need to be faster beating enemies. There is a small chance that your AI partners have beaten most of the enemies before you do. It can really be an issue, especially when you try to get as much BP as possible. What I mostly do in this situation is trying to beat the enemies fast, so that you at least can have as much points as possible. But is this complaint a big issue? Well, it's not the biggest issue of the game, or else I would have talked about it much earlier, but it is an issue nonetheless. It's a good thing though that it doesn't happen too much, but when it happens it's really annoying and you might not be strong enough for a certain boss or part of the story mode. Still, like I already said, it's not the biggest issue of the game and it doesn't happen that often.
You see, I was brief about the complaint. Still, I had much to explain about the complaint. You know what? I'm almost done.
Okay, this time I will really be brief. Okay, sometimes you get hit out of nowhere. It's not a big issue and it doesn't happen all the time, but it can be pretty annoying, especially when the camera is bad and the enemies are sometimes not in screen. Meaning that some enemies have attacks that can reach you even when they are not in screen. The next thing I want to discuss briefly is that when you knock an enemy on the floor, you can get hit by it and you also fall down. This is annoying as well as pretty convenient. Sure, it's annoying being hit by falling enemies, but on the other hand, it doesn't happen that often, and besides, when you fall, you also hit enemies that are close by, which will work to your advantage obviously. I can even say that it feels a bit realistic. A little bit. I mean, how many games has it? It's pretty cool if you ask me.
So finally the verdict. It's not great.
Even though I don't think this game is that great, there are some points that are alright. The other modes, such as Battle Mode and Team Mode, are fun multiplayer modes and it does the gameplay justice, with unlocked characters that has their own fighting styles. And talking about the fighting styles and moves, it's one of the best aspects that this game offers. The graphics are pretty good, the character design are over the top, which is a good thing, and the cutscenes are gorgeous. On the other hand, however, this game has a lot of flaws, such as bad non-beat-em-up segments that are in the story mode, awful escort segment. It's so poorly made, it just blows my mind. The kind of slow controls and bad camera. Even though I can recommend this game to true beat-em-up fans, I can't really recommend this to gamers that just wants to play a video game. It's really mediocre.
So, that was my review of The Bouncer. Hope you find it informative and enjoyable, and yeah, no big story this time. You know, I thought maybe doing something different would be better for the reviews I am doing, you know? But still, how do you end a review like this? I know!